Welcome everyone to Lettering Tips Tuesday. My name is Heather Martinez. Last week I joined a couple of people live and we talked about how to create embellishments using the Big One marker in using Neuland hand. But this week I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the ArtMarker. And so there's a couple of things to note. What you're looking at here is the hand lettering learning pad. Let me just say a few things about this because I'll be using it today to write on. There are two sections of the pad. The front section of the pad has guidelines so that you can use them. This is usually for just the number one, or if you can use the ArtMarker, but I like to use the pages in the back, which also have a slope or a slant to them. And if you have one of the newer hand lettering learning pads, you can see my studio notes. It's part of the book there. So, and if you don't have the new one, you can go to my website and download it. Or I will also put the link along with this video so that you can access and download these for free. So a couple of things about the ArtMarker. This is the Neuland ArtMarker. And I'm gonna write with a couple of them today. Well, I've got all kinds here. The first thing is about holding the ArtMarker, right? And so when you hold the ArtMarker, of course, Neuland has these really groovy grooves that you can put your fingers in, which are great ergonomically. A lot of times I write with my fingers right there. And what that does is that it helps you practice the correct way to hold a pen or a marker. And that is there should be 3 points, your thumb, your index finger, and then you should be able to just hold it with these 2 fingers, and then the marker actually rests on your middle finger. Now, I know a lot of you don't grip your marker that way. If you've been writing all your life with a different style of grip, I completely understand, but this is the way that I hold my marker. And what I find is that a lot of times when I'm working, I will hold my marker very, very, very horizontal to the page so that I can make a nice thick stroke. And so the angle when we're doing brush lettering, specifically perpendicular brush lettering, is that we literally want to hold the marker perpendicular to the largest stroke that we're going to create here, right? And so a lot of times when I'm doing my lettering, I'm holding my marker like this, but what will happen over time is that there will be what I call a belly. And what that means is if the tip of your marker starts to look like this, and it creates sort of a belly because you've pushed down so hard. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll just turn it, and maybe my fingers won't be in the groove, but that will allow me to make more marks with my marker if the marker starts to be bendy or fraying. And that really takes us to the next part, which is when do you replace your marker tip? And so I'll show you here again. You look closely, you can kind of see that belly that I talked about. It's a little bit more rounded at the bottom than it is at the top. And so what happens is after a while, your brush marks will get really brushy looking. See that? It's not as juicy anymore. And just adding ink to this isn't going to bring it back. And I would say that I've been using this for a very, very long time, but I'll go ahead and show you how I replace my marker nibs. Grab just a tissue here. You can use a paper towel or a tissue, whatever needed. You can also use a pair of pliers to pull out the nib. But in this case, I'm just going to use a tissue to pull it out in this way. Great. Neuland has marker replaceable nibs for every marker that they have, and this is the ArtMarker nib. Now sometimes what I like to do is to grab my refill. Of course I'm going to invert it, and then I'm going to hit the refill bulb. And this looks pretty messy here, so I'm going to go ahead and use my tissue to kind of clean up this is called the injector nib. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll put a couple of drops just inside. That's not the proper way to refill your marker, but it will help get the process going. And then I'll push this in. I want to make sure that I don't hit the very top of this because the very tip top of my ArtMarker nib is really sharp and I want to keep it nice. And then sometimes what I'll do if I don't want to wait for the ink to go all the way down is I'll go ahead and add a little bit to the nib here. And this is a fast way to ink your nibs if you're working and you can't wait for the ink to travel all the way down the barrel. But of course, the proper way, the proper way to refill your marker would be to push that into the back end and then slowly, very, very slowly, and I like to do this vertically so that it doesn't run down the sides of the barrel, but just goes into that filter or that felt or whatever the insert is where the ink is held. So I'll very, very slowly press that nib or the refill bowl. And you want to make sure that when you do refill your markers that you do it with the top off. And let me show you a couple of refill holders that I have. Actually, I have one here. This is the refill holder. It's sort of their Cadillac version, and it will hold both number 1, fine ones, and big one markers. And because the refill permanent, you know, the orange marker or the orange casing, but it's actually black ink, is permanent, what you want to make sure you do is keep the lid on as much as you can because it can dry out. I'm just going to add a little bit more ink here so we can see the difference between an old nib that we had going here and what a new nib would look like. Oh, that's nice and juicy, and that's a very clean line. Again, is to hold your marker as horizontal to the page as possible, both at the top of the page, but also horizontal this way, right? And then what we're gonna do is just push as hard as we can and move the marker down. And then with each stroke that we make, we're gonna slightly bring it up and use less pressure, and then slightly up some more and less pressure, until we get a really thin line. And all of these, notice that all of these marks are going down. And then the final line is going to be a line where you just very lightly touch the page and pull up. And that's going to be our thinnest line. And it's using the least amount of pressure. And something to note that when you're doing what's called perpendicular lettering is that you're pointing the marker towards the thickest line you want to create. So say we make a V and we don't want to make this one continuous motion. We want to make one thick line and then we want to do one thin line. And notice that the rule in brush lettering in this particular lettering style that we're going to warm up with is thick down, thin up. And so you can make a couple of these. And the faster you go, it's likely that your line isn't going to be as thick. But here we've got thick down, thin up. And notice that I'm pausing between each one of these. Then the next thing that you can do is you can practice your curves, which means you're going to go thick down and thin up. And notice that where the transition happens here, I'm actually thinking about it here because it's starting to begin, right? And so again, we've got thick down, thin up. That's the rule for this lettering warm up. And then, so if we were to start at the baseline and go up, it would be thin up and then thick down. And again, the transition is happening here, but I'm thinking about it before that actually occurs. So one thing to remember when you're practicing is if you're going to go thick down, thin up, and say thick down again, I would stop there. I would not make one of these as you go. It actually builds bad muscle memory. Anybody that's teaching this, I don't know why they're teaching it this way because all of our strokes are independent strokes that build up letters, okay? Any questions so far about just this warm-up? This helps us know what our range of our tip is depending on what kind of marker we're using. It could be any marker. It could be that our marker's dry, that it's got a lot of ink in it. Just doing this warm-up here and these warm-ups here will help us know how flexible our nib is. All right, I'm gonna change to gray. And the reason why I'm gonna change to gray is because I want you to see how some of my strokes come together. And the reason why I like to practice, I suggest practicing with a gray or one of the s'mores markers, because once we start adding a couple of layers on, say I wanted to make a letter T like this, and I wanted to put the crossbar on, I can see where my lines cross because this is a little transparent. And so it's really helpful to be able to practice with grays. I also like working with grays because if I'm drawing, I'm a little self-conscious about my drawing. And so rather than just using black on white paper, sometimes I will begin by drawing with a light gray and then going on top of it with a darker gray. And these are pretty close together. I think it's 105 and 106. But sometimes I'll build up from the really light ones, like 101, all the way up to really, really dark ones. And so I like using this particular ink to be able to show that. Also wanted to let you know that there is a free lettering video. It's called Unlock Your Neuland Markers, and you can check that out at www.letslettertogether.com. And I believe it's the second to the last video. I cover brush lettering, and I cover every single letter in the lowercase alphabet. And so, and there's a exemplar that you can download from that as well. I also want to show you how to hold your marker for other things. A lot of times when I'm doing this lettering style, I'll connect my letters. So I'll just write the word connect so you can see how these are connected. Thick down, thin up. Notice that I will end my letter about midway going up. That will allow me to attach it to the next letter. There I go again. With the E, I'm gonna just show you here, you're gonna go way out here because when you go to connect your E to your C and again your C to your T, you need to pull that way out so that it doesn't get too bunched up. You want nice spacing here. And again, because I'm using this light gray color, you can see where all of my strokes overlap. And the speed in which I was writing there, that's the speed in which I actually write. Even when I'm graphic recording, I might go a little bit faster, but this is how slow I go so that they can all connect. But if you don't care for them to connect, that's fine. You can still use the thick down, thin up rule to making brush letters. And your N can just stay there, or it can go below the baseline if you want it to. Notice that when I make my E, I actually make a C, and then I connect it from the middle going up. Some people go up to down. Some people start in the middle and go around. It's just about where do you feel like you have the most control. So this is not connected. So I'll put a, that's what it looks like when you don't connect. And some other lettering styles. Sometimes I just use the whole broad edge. Remember I said that whenever you want to make a thick line, you make your marker perpendicular to that line. So when I'm writing in Architect, which is a lettering style that I offer on my website, and here I'm bouncing the letters, meaning I'm letting the baseline go up and down, mainly because I like the way that these letters are in relationship to each other in this way. And you'll notice that every time I wrote a really thick line, I had to change the angle of my marker. But I'm still holding my marker in the same way I showed you before, using the grooves. So you've got the 3-point touching, and that's just how I hold my marker. And even though Neuland Hand, which is this really thick lettering style that's behind me, and also I teach that in Unlock Your Neuland Markers, you can also sort of fake Neuland Hand. By keeping in mind that you want to make all of the strokes as thick as possible. So notice I keep changing, and watch me do this D. I keep changing the angle of my marker so I can make it really thick. So the ArtMarker can do all kinds of great things. You can get these nice thicks and thins. You can get these nice thicks all over. With the Architect, this isn't as thick as this one. I think it's because the Neuland Hand, I'm really pushing hard and I'm trying to make it as horizontal as possible to get that thickest line. with architect, there's so many wonderful variations. You can really make it look nice just by giving it a little bit of bounce, or you can even add some thick symptoms here if you want to. See, this R here isn't thick all the way, so I think that's fine. Same with the C whenever there's a curve. Another lettering style that I'll be teaching, if you've taken my any of my in-person classes, or if you'll be lettering with me at UViz, or in the fall, I'm putting out a new class called Letter Like a Sign Painter. And that particular lettering style is completely based on this stroke. And it looks like I just made a very easy downstroke, but notice that I'm actually pointing in this direction. And the key is you want to get this angle. And you may not see it on this video, but it's really important, especially when we go to make something like an A or an M. These angles right here emulate what a sign painter's brush would look like. Now, a sign painter's brush has really, really long bristles. They're about an inch, inch and a half. And so it's very hard to learn how to paint or letter like a sign painter. And so when I took a couple of sign painting classes, it was a real challenge for me. And one of the things that I do to get better at my lettering is, as soon as I learn a lettering style, either from a calligrapher or a graffiti artist or a sign painter, is I come home and I try to do it with my markers, and then I try to share that with you. So Letter Like the Sign Painter will be an upcoming class both at UViz, and in the fall I'll have an online class. Just a quick commercial. If you want to letter with me at UViz, there's 4 ways to do that. And right now, because it is Neuland's 50th anniversary, they are holding a raffle, and they're giving away 2 free tickets to UViz and 2 free tickets to my workshop, as well as Kelby Birds and Brandy Agarbet. So you can join the raffle. I think it's on through the end of the month. You can go to neuland.com/raffle. And if you don't want to wait for the raffle, or you want to guarantee your spot, because I just have 2 spots left in the class, you can go to bit.ly/UViz letters. And the registration page is the same registration that UViz is using, which is Conferize. And then while I'm at the conference, I'll be offering 1-hour, 1-to-1 lettering sessions for those who want to letter with me. And I am offering a breakout session, which is how to letter like a sign painter. And so that's one way to letter with me in person, if you'd like. That next Thursday, I offer a workshop it's an online workshop called Lettering with the Masters. This is a monthly workshop, and next month we're going to be lettering with Carol Dubosh. That's Thursday, May 17th. And she's going to be translating the tools that she uses, these are all calligraphy tools, into the markers that we use. And this is literally 1-for-1 here, that when I photographed this, I wanted to show people that this is 1-for-1, what tools that you could actually use. She's going to be showing a lettering style called monoline unchal, and I believe she'll be using one of these pens to be able to show that, but she'll be demonstrating some other examples as well. And Lettering with the Masters is a year-long online course that you can join anytime. From the point that you join, going forward, you get to join live sessions like this. They usually last about an hour, hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on how much material that the masters have and how many questions people are calling in with. And if you join midstream in the year, that's fine. You still have access to all of the lettering masters that we've shown before. We've had, let's see, in January, we had Karina Keeling, and she did a fantastic lettering style that's sort of a mix between script and print, and how the magic in what she showed us is how to connect letters and how letters live in relationship to one another. In the second month, we were able to letter with calligraffiti artist Max Gibbons, and he was using the broad edge markers to do fracture and gothic and some really cool graffiti stuff. So if you're looking to do some graffiti, this is a great intro to that. It's not really usable in a lot of recording because it's not very readable, but if you're doing something that's thematic and you want to put some authentic looking graffiti, it's a really great resource. And being able to manipulate the pen in the way that he shows us how will actually improve all of your other lettering styles as well. Then let's see, in March, we had Paula Fagerberg, and she taught us italic using the ArtMarker. And so that was really helpful, especially for those who want to improve their handwriting. The ArtMarker is great for that because it forces you to really slow down and look at your form. And she showed us a very fast way, and it's actually the way she letters all the time. So it's, I think, become her natural, I call it rapid capture lettering style. And then last month in April, we had Ben Tinker, and Ben Tinker showed us how to do, how to construct drawn letters. A lot of the classes that you take from me, I let the marker do the heavy lifting. So if we're using, say, a 30 millimeter or one of the big ones, here we go, a big one, all of these really thick markers, this one's hacked. I share that in my in-person classes, but he showed us, I always show how to make a letter just using the thickness of this, and he showed us how to construct letters and then how to fill them, including a bevel and a 3D letter. So that was really exciting. But this month we're gonna be lettering with Carol Dubois. And the reason why I chose Carol is she is, I wanna say she's actually responsible for my lettering habit. She taught me how to do calligraphy. She's taught me several hands, and she's very encouraging. And so I believe she's going to be very encouraging for us too. So while we will be back next Lettering Tips Tuesday because of this Lettering with the Masters, we have a tech call on Tuesday. And so I'm changing the Lettering Tip Tuesday live call May 15th to noon Mountain Daylight Time. Yes. So go ahead, and I'll put that on Facebook and on social media. You'll see I'll be advertising for that with the new time, and then we'll go back to the regular time.